I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Finance Auditing Committee of Thursday, July 23rd, 2026. Before we begin, please note the meeting is being recorded. Welcome to everyone on Zoom and in person joining us, as well as our new Zoom option. Madam Secretary, please begin by calling the roll.
Thank you. And just another reminder, as this meeting is being held in person and streaming via Zoom on the computer platform, as well as people phoning in on their cell phones or their personal devices. Be advised that the closed captioning is available for those of you in the meeting via Zoom. To view closed captioning, click on the icon at the bottom toolbar of your webinar window. Members of the public wishing to address the committee on matters of business being heard today may do so after the presenter has completed the presentation and the chair opens the floor for public comment. All speakers will be given up to 3 minutes to address the committee. If you have not already done so, members of the public attending in person who would like to address the committee are asked to please fill out a speaker card and submit it to Thomas in the back of the room. For remote public comment, either click on tap the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and select raise hand, or if dialing in, dial *9. Justine is the facilitator of the virtual meeting room and will call on any speakers. Once it's your turn to speak, you will receive a notification to unmute, and if you're dialing in, dial *6 to unmute. With that, ready to move into the agenda.
Okay, call the roll.
Yes, we are. Thank you. All right, we're going to start with Director Cochran.
Here.
Devlin is absent. Hernandez is absent. Mastin.
Here.
Rodoni.
Here.
Vice Chair Parr.
Here.
Chair Giudice.
Here.
And President Rabbit.
Here.
Thank you. You have your quorum, and you are also a committee of the whole. We also have Directors Hardiman, Garbarino, Hill, and Snyder.
Perfect, and thank you. I'll begin with agenda item number 3, which is ratification of the previous actions by the Auditor Controller. The staff report begins on page 5, and I'm pleased to see Monique Spike here in the room from PFM today to go over the PFM investment report. Welcome, Monique, and please begin your report when you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I will start by saying anything I said last month is irrelevant today. So let's start there. I think the big picture items that I'm going to put on the table are that, the conflict with Iran is not resolved. We're not in a ceasefire. We are where we are with that. Secondly, the presidential administration is on Plan C with regard to tariffs, and they're looking to implement another tariff plan with, the average tariff rate expecting to be 12.5% and with a 50% tariff expecting on Canadian goods. The good news is that, neither the geopolitical events or the tariff situation has changed our investment philosophy. I think quite practically what it's done is really emphasize the importance of liquidity, high credit quality, and a disciplined short-term investment approach. So I just want to anchor our conversation there. So let's jump into the materials. I'm going to start on page 1 of our report, which is the Treasury yield curve. And I'll say a few things. At the start of the summer, investors expected easier monetary policy. We know how things have shifted. Where we are today is that, people expect that the Fed is going to remain on hold, and the markets, quite frankly, have become less confident about rate cuts. We are now firmly in a situation where we are expecting rate increases. And so where we sit today is that, Chair Warsh, who has started, their new administration for the Fed, last meeting voted to keep rates unchanged. There's now a 25% probability that we have a rate increase before the end of the year, and a 50% probability that next year we'll see another rate increase. So again, very different expectation, mind shift. And I think it's reflective of the fact that, with higher oil prices, and now the tariff situation is very, very new, but I think there's an admittance even from Chair Warsh that the data on the ground suggests that we may have to be a little bit more protective. The other thing I want to point out is that, oil prices have gotten higher with the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. If you take a look at page 4 of your packet, we have a couple of things there. So energy prices reintroduced inflation risk. I talked about that. talked about why it's important for our strategy to maintain duration. The recent oil shift, the pressures for Iran have pushed treasury prices down further. And so we've actually seen yield increases. The 2-year treasury ended the month at 4.17. Today we're at 4.35%. From our position, that gives us attractive buying opportunities. We're taking advantage where we can, and we're continuing to be very prudent. And so despite the volatility in the markets, our strategy is anchored and has been anchored in those fundamentals. Another thing I can say about the inflationary prices with oil is that, CPI has been decent. Consumers have continued their spending. Retail sales were strong. So despite these pressures, the consumer is still really holding up the economy. And so we're not necessarily expecting a crash, but the fact that the Fed is now being very open about, perhaps you might see some rate increases, I think that shows that we're still in a very protective mode. The last thing I want to impart on you all today is that, credit markets have continued to be resilient. Companies are still doing well. We've had some volatility in the stock market. A lot of that is because of the uncertainty around oil prices and the uncertainty around tariffs. But for our part, we're really comfortable with credit fundamentals. If you take a look at the portfolio, you see we're continuing to be diversified. We are working with your staff very closely on liquidity needs. And we think that, again, that focus on the fundamentals is what's most important in an environment where you're getting a lot of chaos in terms of what investors are seeing, hearing from the administration. So I'll pause there for questions.
Thank you, Monique. Questions? Please, Director Maston.
Monique, on page, I need some clarification. On page 2, real spending and income graph, I get the real spending, I think, line, but what is the real personal income line related to? I mean, 6% back in 23 and 0% in 26. What percentages of what?
So I want to say the real personal income relates to wage growth, but I can get you some clarity on that, Director Maston. I can get some details and add a footnote.
I'm just curious. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I'll get some clarity from our analysts.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions, directors? Any other narrative, Monique?
I look forward to next month.
Fantastic. So do we. Okay, that concludes our discussion on item number 3. Before we take our vote, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
We have no members of the public wishing to speak on this item.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion on agenda item number 3, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Perfect. Thank you. Madam Secretary, kindly call the roll.
Thank you. We have a first and a second starting voting on item number 3, starting with Director Cochran.
Yes.
Devlin is absent. Giudice.
Yes.
Hernandez is absent. Hill.
Yes.
Maston.
Aye.
Moulton Peters is absent. Parr.
Yes.
Parrish is absent. Redoni.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Beer is absent. Second Vice President Garbarino.
Yes.
First Vice President Hardeman.
Yes.
And President Rabbit.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll continue on to item 5A, which is authorization filing an application with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission for fiscal year 26-27, Transportation Development Act, State Transit Assistance, Regional Measure 2 and Regional Measure 3, operating funds to support bus, ferry, and paratransit services. Jennifer Benucci is here to present the report. Welcome, and please proceed.
Good morning. All right, I have before you, it's an annual item that we request, and it's really an operating support claim for with MTC for TDA, STA, RM2, and RM3. Totals about $27.6 million. So this fiscal year claim is about 3% lower than fiscal year 26, but we had some significant changes, so just wanted to highlight a couple things that this is usually a pretty boring annual item, but with the offset, with the implementation of mascots, we had a historic Sonoma County formula that was replaced by a performance-based formula. And for this year, there's a projected ridership and revenue miles as part of the mascots implementation. So that had a shift of the formula, which for us meant that we are shifting 5.8 million over to SMART and the Sonoma County operators. On the other end, however, to the district's benefit, we had this hold harmless provision that was established by the state legislature to freeze STA allocations based on pre-pandemic data from the expired this year. So the formula was frozen for a moment in time based on pre-pandemic data. For us, we had an increase in what they said qualifying revenues were. So we actually benefited and got an increase of around $3 million in the revenue-based STA funds this year. And for the same reason, we also expect an increase of about $900,000 in the state of good repair capital funds that aren't shown in this item, but we're also part of that action. Lastly, we also had 2 funding swaps we agreed upon to facilitate SMART's implementation of mascots. So it's a zero impact to the district, but just it follows through in the formula. So RM3 TDA MTC will give $500,000 to the district, and in exchange, we'll reduce the Sonoma TDA claim by $500,000, and then the TAM will give about $431,000 and an additional $100,000 in the following fiscal year to the district. And that will reduce our SDA claim, and then we'll redistribute that over to SMART. So there's just 2 pass-throughs there. Happy to answer any questions, or if Dennis would like to elaborate on the hold harmless clause.
Please.
We're very fortunate that the transit operators chose to let that sunset. There was some strong interest by some of our friends to continue it. But in light of all the things that were happening, we were a little aggressive in advocating that it should sunset, and we're pleased that it did sunset because it helped offset some of the changes in Sonoma County for us.
Yeah, well put. Thank you, Jennifer, for the report, and thank you, Dennis. Are there any questions or comments from the directors at this time? Seeing none, that concludes discussion on item number 5A. Before we take our vote, is anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
I have no public comment for this item.
Thank you. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second. Thank you. I appreciate that, gentlemen. Madam Secretary, please call a roll call vote.
Thank you. Voting on item 5A with the first and second, starting with Director Cochran.
Aye.
Devlin is absent. Giudice.
Yes.
Hernandez is absent. Hill.
Yes.
Maston.
Aye.
Moulton Peters is absent. Parr.
Aye.
Parrish is absent. Berdoni.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Thier is absent. Second Vice President Garbarino.
Aye.
First Vice President Hardeman.
Aye.
And President Rabbit.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 6, which is a presentation on workers' compensation claims, data 2026. Kelly Vitale is here to present the report. Somewhere. Yes, she is. Good morning, Kelly.
That's what I would mind him. Thank you. Okay. So I thought it would be a good idea to share with you some data that we've extrapolated from the claims information over the last 10 years. I thought 10 years would be a good capture. And so you can just look at it and then I can leave the room. We can let the numbers tell the story, but they really don't tell all of the story. So I thought it would be important for me, especially because we just renewed the contract for the third-party administrator. I thought it would be important for me to maybe share a little bit of my story. Y'all know I like to gab. So I have some bullet points to share with you about just some of the things that we've done, because of course the numbers tell part of the story, right? But I think that there's much that's lost in translation in between the numbers. So before we move on to the numbers, I'd thought I'd share with you that when I first started, I've been here about 7 years. And when I first came in, we had about 400. We had 398 open workers' comp claims, and we had just over 200 liability claims. So in case you didn't know, I oversee both of the segments, right? I oversee all the liability and workers' comp. Currently, we're resting at about 208 open workers' comp claims, and we have 140 open liability claims. So that's it's interesting in that sometimes people assume because of the number of employees, if you're just talking about workers' comp, and then you see the number of open claims, you think, well, 200 people have open claims. And so just to clarify before we get into the numbers, remember that sometimes a person can have more than one claim. And it doesn't have to be simultaneous, right? It could be from another time or period. And previous to me coming to the district, and the reason we had so many open claims was the philosophies were a little different. And so claims weren't settled out completely by compromise and release. So a lot of them were left open. So you may have somebody that had a claim from 20 years ago, and then that same person also has a claim now today, right? So that counts for 2 of the 208 that we have open. So does that make sense? Why we have the number versus the number of employees, right? So we've reduced both books of business. What's really important is that we're self-insured. So the numbers that you're going to see, you're probably going to drop your chin on the ground, except that you all know I come in here asking for money for the claim. So you see some of it, but the cost would be exponentially higher, and we would have very, very limited control if we had insurance premiums. Right now we pay about $400,000 a year for excess coverage, and that's for any claim over 1.2. We pay the first dollar of every claim up to that. What we would be paying is probably closer to about 4 or 5 million in workers' comp coverage if we were just insured, and we would have no control over our claims. So when claims go to a carrier, that carrier then sends it to an adjusting agency, and then they make all the decisions. They inform you, but you have no say. Now, we still have to follow the legislature and the labor code, but we have much more control. We can control the medical that they receive. We can control the return to work. We can work up through the settlements quicker. So being self-insured is much more lucrative financially and for some semblance of control. So a couple of the things that we've done since I've been here, we've opened up a clinic for employee accessibility and improved service for HR. And so John showed you a picture of the clinic. That was their new site. They had been in a single wide, not a double wide. And so we appreciate that Bus got a new trailer for us, and we split that trailer with them. And the clinic, originally my dream was from something, an employer I'd worked with many years ago. They had an on-site nurse practitioner, and this was at McClatchy Papers, and she took care of all the injured people and became their friend, and they would tell her all their woes, and it was so beneficial for the injured workers. And I always dreamed that we could do that here, and then the pandemic hit, and so the clinic kind of became more of a COVID emergency, and it never really got to fully resemble what my dream was. We're really close to it now, but they have been so helpful with HR. So as John spoke to, employees come in there for pre-employment exams. They come in there for physical assessments. They do our DOT drug testing, which is alcohol, blood, and urine. They also do all of my blood lead testing for my environmental health. They do all of my respiratory questionnaire. They have to do a questionnaire, and then our environmental health specialist, he does the fit testing. They do wellness. They go to safety meetings, and I'm hoping within 60 days, they're going to be able, now that they're consented, they'll be able to act like a brick and mortar. We thought we were going to be able to implement it on July 1st, but we need a little bit more time because they have to be able to use the system that Concentra uses. And so to do that, they wanted some money at first. And of course, you know how I am about that. I said, nope. And so then we worked a little harder with the CEO of Concentra. And so it looks like we're going to be able to get their brick and mortar claim medical record system because it has to be the same as the providers that are in our medical provider network so that they can keep our records. Otherwise, it won't work. And so we're really close to getting that for no charge because we already pay them enough. And so that will be excellent because then any injured worker can go in instead of leaving San Rafael and just go get treatment. Right now, they just triage and they determine if they need to go get care. They can't really do any actual treatment. And so I'm hoping within 60 days, we'll be able to roll out. They'll actually be acting like a brick and mortar in our little double wide trailer. So that's really exciting. And we opened that, like I said, into 2021, right at the height of the pandemic. And we've just continued to increase services. So that's something I think that's excellent for the district, but mostly for the employees. We did revamp our utilization review process. And what that means is every claim that goes through workers' comp, they have to get their treatment approved, just like you and I do when we go to use our regular doctors. And what we did was I changed the filing for the district with the state so that it includes what's called pass-throughs. So there's 6 things that are automatically approved so that they're not delayed through the process, so the employees get the immediate treatment. That includes physical therapy, acupuncture, chiropractic, occupational therapy, MRI of bones and joints, and specialist referrals. So the adjuster gets it and right through. It's a retrospective approval, and that we can make the appointments and get scheduled. So that was a big win for the employees as well to avoid delays. I also improved access to our medical provider network that I mentioned. We get to have that because we are self-insured, and it's filed with the state, and it's administered through our third-party administrator. We now just have a link that goes to every employee when they file a claim so that they can get on there if they're not happy with who they're seeing, and they can find a doctor in their area, or they can certainly call Karen or the adjuster, but it's great. And we also have biannual meetings with them to vet physicians because sometimes doctors don't report the way they should. So that has been a big improvement. Next, with RFP, we just approved, you just approved last month. I structured the RFP services a little differently. Normally you would do bundled services. So the administration of the claims, utilization review, and bill review. What had been done in the past was we would receive monthly bills for the administration, and then the bill review and the utilization review were billed to the claim file. So every year I do a report to the state, and that report comes from our claims that are open, and I report all the incurred reserves to the state. And then the state says, oh, well, wait, now we're going to give you your assessment. Then they send us a bill for being self-insured, and this assessment is based on our incurred reserves. Well, that incurred reserve includes my bill review and utilization review fees. So I said this year when we go out to market, I want those fees not just bundled, but I want them fixed. You've done our business for over 10 years. You know what to charge us. You can get an aggregate average, and you can give us a fixed fee. And I want the district to pay it. I don't want it on my claims because I want to reduce what my total incurred is on my claims. So they did. So we're going to save about 20%. So we'll be paying more monthly, but we won't see it on the back end of the claims. The bill review, to give you an example, on annual, we were spending on the claims about $100,000 a year on claims cost for bill review services. So that's every time a bill comes through, they put it in a system. It's figured to the California fee schedule, and it's reduced and then paid. So that charge is now fixed and monthly. It's no longer whatever they charge goes on the claim. And the same with utilization review. That was being charged on an aggregate of about $90,000 a year per claim, and that was reduced to $85,000 fixed. I'm sorry if I didn't say, but the bill review was on $100K and fixed to $90. So we'll see a significant savings there as well. And then the more strategic things we've done, I've talked to you about the compromises and releases. We now do them some with open medical. We use structured settlements so that we realize the savings with present day values. And we also have included language that I spoke about last month that will limit or attempt to prohibit people from claiming the same body part multiple times or coming back for another body part later after their claim has settled. We've improved the interactive process with the California Code of Regulations Title II, Section 11069, and that allows us to begin discussions of accommodation after 2 years of workers' comp, after the employees have exhausted their leave. And instead of, in the past, we used to have to wait for people to be permanent and stationary, which could take 5, 6, 7 years. So now we're doing that sooner. And so the employees know where they stand. They're not sitting in limbo. Like, do I have a job? Am I going to work? They can retire, they can separate, or they come back. So we implemented the Title II interactive discussions. We did update all essential job functions. That's been really helpful for the clinic, because when they come into the clinic, if they're doing a pre or a post or they've been off on leave, we send them that essential function. And some of it needed to be updated because it had expectations on there that weren't in line with safety requirements. And then we also improved the COBRA reporting. There was a big gap in COBRA reporting, and every MOU has a different established period of time that somebody can be off before their benefits are done. And we tightened that up, and now folks are regularly and routinely updated about their COBRA benefits, so the district isn't just paying benefits forever for an eternity. So that's all the magic that's happened up to this point. And so now I'll start with the first graph, and just stop me if you have questions. Like I said, the numbers are the numbers, you can see them, but some of the highlights of these numbers are, I did fiscal year and then traditional year, just so you could just see the differences. But what that total paid means versus what the incurred is, remember when I mentioned that I have to report the incurred reserves to the state? So every time a claim is opened, the adjuster has to place a certain amount of money on there based on history. So the age of the person, the type of injury they've had, how old they are, we have to establish reserves and medical, in indemnity, and in permanent impairment and expenses. So that's called an incurred reserve, right? It's incurred but not paid. And then you have the paid. So you see the green is what they paid and the blue is what they incurred. And then they're really actually very close numbers. And that's good because that shows you that they have a really good reserving structure and mechanism. But it also shows you that from the year 2016 to the year 2026, because this is fiscal year, our costs paid have substantially reduced, even though everything is more expensive, right? Sure, we have less claims. We have less claims that are open, but everything is significantly more expensive. So for me, that was the biggest highlight. And you'll see the year 2022, $7 million incurred, but that's because I was settling claims. And so they were ramping up their reserves for my projected settlements. But that was our biggest year. And then on the next slide, I believe that this is the average paid per all departments paid. Whoops, I can't see this part. Yeah, for average paid versus incurred for fiscal year. I think that's actually the same. Oh, okay. So the first one was total paid, and then the second one is what the average was. And so this was the average for all of, sorry, I couldn't see it on there. So this was what averaged out for each year for the fiscal year. So what we ended, our average ended at 10.5 million for the year 2026. But in 2016, it was 23.8, almost 24 million. Again, so a substantial decrease, right? Again, because of the claim volume first, and because of because we've settled so many claims, right? And we're getting them closed quicker. And then the next slide. So what this talks about is when you see the word entered versus closed, that means every time that a claim is reported, it's entered into a claim system. California requires that all self-insured employers report everything, whether there's medical treatment or not. If somebody was injured, it has to be reported, because unfortunately what was happening is employers that were self-insured were marking everything as first aid. So then they weren't reporting it to the state. So the assessments were inappropriate. And then people were actually not getting paid. And then when they went to market, it looked like they had a really small loss ratio. So they'd get better premiums if they needed to get coverage. And so everything gets reported now. So you'll see that this is a substantial decrease in the number of claims. In our highest, we were at 177, and we have dropped significantly. Last year, we were at 122. But even during the pandemic, you'll see our claims remain pretty steady. In 2022, we had a higher number, and that was actually because of the claims that were filed for COVID. We had an additional, I believe, like 25 to 27 COVID claims filed that year, because the law changed and allowed for folks to apply for COVID through workers' comp if they were off more than 7 days. So that's why you see a little more claims in 2022. My favorite is 2026. That's just a stellar, and then to also be to offset it with, the closing. And so in the claims world, you always want to have 100% closing ratio. That's what the claims teams always want. And until I came, they could never participate in their closing programs. And that's because we didn't settle claims before. We just kept the medical open. And so the claims teams are now able to participate in their closing programs at Athens, because we actually close claims through settlements now. And so that's why the closing numbers are also so significant. And then in the next slide, I just wanted to demonstrate to you, so you could see all the claims, but how about if you look at them from a department view? And so that's what this next, and I did captured a 5-year period because I couldn't fit the 10-year on there. It was really, really small. So I did the 5-year just to give you an example of, obviously we know that Bus and Bridge have our most claims because they have our most employees. And they're the most laborious, the hardest jobs, most laborious within the district. But you'll see the trends on average, right? A bus averages right about 70 claims every year. And bridges, behind them a little bit, usually somewhere in the 50s. And then administration. Kelly runs such a tight ship, we never have claims. We don't have very many employees. That's the joke, you guys. All right, and then on the next slide, this is just my favorite topic, of course, is settlements. And so what this is settlements. This is a good sample to show you how things were and then how they are now, and then the impact they've had. So if you'll notice that the purple line is the compromise and release, my favorite color, my favorite type of settlement. And then the yellow gold is the STIP. And so you'll see how it went opposite, right? Where in 2016, 17, 18, 19, just before I got here, there were a lot of stipulations. And with those stipulations, what happens is it leaves the claim open for the district to cover medical, and the employee can file for new and further and petition for more disability and more indemnity. So most of the time, that's not the best way to go. Sometimes it's your only option, dependent upon the case. But then you'll see things kind of changed after 2020. And we started getting a lot of compromise and release. And actually what I noted was that from 2020 through 2025, we closed 193 files just through settlements. So that's great. And that's not including the folks that are just discharged, returned back to work, don't have any settlements. So I thought that was a pretty incredible number over 5 years to close almost 200 claims just through settling them, right? And the last slide. And this is total settlements in monetary terms by fiscal year. And then, of course, there's settlement type. And there's those big purple lines, Kelly's spending all the money. Those were our bigger. So I kind of call those our catch-up years, the 2020 through 2024 there, because I was getting all the old book of claims, as many as I could, plus new ones, off the district's books. And so that's why you see that significant change in those years, right? Just different philosophy, different strategy. And I think that's it. So I'm open to take any questions that any of you have about any of the information that I shared.
Thank you, Kelly. And you're visibly proud of the presentation as well. You should be. I spent quite a lot of time speaking with our auditor controller about this yesterday, and your efforts are truly laudable. Getting these claims settled and off the books is not only the compassionate and the right thing to do, but it's also just smart business and great for the district. So
Thank you.
I really appreciate your efforts. And I know that Director Garbarino and I want to know if you do work on the side.
Before I came to the district, I worked for a group of hospitals in Southern California and in San Jose. And when they were dissolving and going into bankruptcy, and they actually asked me when they were, just before I got the job here, they asked if I would do some consulting to help a TPA who was not getting it done. And so I did a little moonlighting for them to try to help them. But the TPA that they were working with then ended up getting purchased by a big TPA. And
Right.
So it wasn't helpful for me to help them. But I think I'll close with this, that if you don't know me personally, I really like to leave things better than I find them. And that's not to imply that I'm better than anybody. It's to say there's always room for improvement. I do that at home. I do it when I bake. I do it with my relationships, and I do it with work. So if I find something, the first thing I'm looking for is how can I make it more efficient? What can I do to make this better? I learned from my grandma. I'll get a recipe and I always look at, oh, that's great advice. Now, how am I going to make it? Right. So that's how I look at everything. And so it doesn't mean that one way is better than the other, but I just certainly hope that when I'm done at the district, I've left it in such a better place than when I came to it, and that it can continue on.
Thank you, Director Maston, and then Director Garbarino.
Thank you. I've got an observation and comment that somewhat echoes Chair Giudice's. You arrived in 2019 or thereabouts, and the charts on page 6 and 7 are really, to me, a testament to your aggressive work on behalf of not only our employees but also the district to settle claims and let everybody move on with their life. And I think that's great, and I really applaud your work, and again, on behalf of the employees in the district as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Please.
Thank you. I don't even want to share what our experience mod once was.
Exactly.
Bad, yeah. So proudly, it's half of that now, thank God. But the whole presentation about having the medical nurse practitioner on site, our insurance company, I laud you guys for that. It's huge.
So much more.
Our insurance company actually paid for it initially to try to, and the powers that be at the time, my dad, who had the keys to the kingdom, so he was going to say yes or no to everything, hated the idea. What a waste. He was the first patient. And it's really helped
Right.
overall. So
Right.
I laud you again. for
Yeah.
that. And it's so good for the employees.
It's so good for the employees, and
they
that
don't
and,
have to go somewhere.
right. Well, and
Yeah.
I think that it's hard because our bus culture is a hard culture to tap into, right? I walked in with a plate of brownies when I first started, and they all looked at me, right? And normally you bring food, everybody's coming around you, right? They're a hard crowd. You really have to work to fill the trust cup, and having the nurse right there. That's the first thing I've said to any one of them when we've had a couple of nurse practitioners. And I said, please don't sit in this trailer. Please don't sit in this trailer. Please don't sit in here. Go out there, go sit in the lunchroom, go in the break room,
Right.
give them garbage about their vending machines, because we've always tried to get them to make healthier choices in the vending machines, right? I said, but you are going to have to fill the trust cup. You're going to have to work hard to do it. And she's done that. She goes to their safety meetings and all the departments. And so she's not just in the trailer. She comes up to Bridge once in a while. They do ergonomics. And so they'll get in and involved with the workstations, and the employees are now starting to come in and talk to her about, they want to monitor because they think their blood sugar is high, and what should they do? And so things that aren't work related. And that's what I want, because that will fill the trust cup. And then the bus people can take a little bit of a breath, right? And maybe feel like, look, we're extending this to you. We care. And that it's taken a while. And I think once we're able to do brick and mortar style service, that's going to even extend further, because then they won't have to go to San Francisco. They won't have to go to Pleasant Hill. They can come in there and receive the nurse practitioner treatment that they would. And it's really so much more accessible, right? Now that they already have a relationship with her. So I think it's great.
Trust cup.
Mhm.
That's cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Fellow directors, any other comments? Okay, seeing none. That concludes our discussion on this item. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
We have no public comment on this item.
Thank you. This item requires no action. So we'll continue on to item number 7, which is status report of fiscal year 25-26 budget. Our auditor controller, Jennifer Minucci, is here to provide the report. Welcome back.
Thank you. Looks like everyone passed the quiz on that last one. So again, thanks. Kelly has done, I can see it in the books. So as your auditor controller, you really see the change when you get those liabilities off the book. So I'm actually very grateful for the work that she does. It's hard work for sure. In light of our lovely customer service, I already got an email from Monique. So I'm going to go ahead and follow up on Director Maston's question so you guys could all hear. So she's already sent us a response that said, real personal income is the total income received by individuals from all sources, such as wages, salaries, business income, interest, dividends, rental income, and government benefits, adjusted for inflation. In other words, it measures consumers' purchasing power, not just the number of dollars they receive. So per the reference on the chart, real purchasing power or income for consumers did not grow, and in some cases, it was negative. So that probably makes sense looking at the
Thank
price of the
you.
pumps.
And we appreciate
the bread.
Monique's,
Yes, so she's listening. She is very prompt.
thank you, Monique.
So appreciate that. All right, I'll move on to item number 7 if you're ready to do the status report.
Yes.
All right, this is where I'm like, it's the post game. So now we have finished our fiscal year. I'm going to be talking about our quarterlies and our year-end wrap up. And I'm actually excited about it this year. Normally I kind of like, here we go. So if you're on item number 7, I always look, and I'm sorry, I don't actually have pages in front of me, but it is the chart that we always look on the rundown for attachment A, where again, on the books budgeted, we thought we were going to be 58 million in the hole. We got that SB 125 one-time funding that gave us 34.5. So we started the year at 23.69 in the negative. As we went through the year, due to everybody's real, I do have to say, staff has been very diligent on spending expenses. They actually are fessing up, calling me, asking if, it's okay to spend certain amounts and really trying to make good choices. So I have appreciated that because we are having a surplus at the end of this year. So this is your year-end report. We will be rolling over about $20 million.
The surplus, though, is the one-time COVID relief money. So we had $34 million of one-time COVID relief money we put in this year. We thought we were going to have a huge deficit on top of that, but by reducing expenses and higher than expected traffic, we only spent $14 million of that one-time COVID relief money. So we have $20 million available next year. And Jennifer, in the next report, will explain why that $14 million actually doesn't represent revenues over expenses for the fiscal year because it includes a payback.
Correct.
And you knew he was going to jump in there.
Well, the foreshadowing, he's good for the tee up on the foreshadowing. So yeah. And also just as reference, we talked a lot about the budget last month that you all approved. And the beginning of that budget showed a $47 million shortfall. And so this 20 million will go towards that shortfall on the books to start with. So I'm really happy to see that we've already made progress on next year's budget without now that we're in July. So with that, item number 8, however, talks about our trends over the last 12 months. On the first page is always the traffic for June, but I always turn to the following page, which has the chart on bridge, bus, and ferry for ridership and traffic as well as revenues. And this is our year end. So I'm pleased to see, as I say, all modes are up. So in particular, bridge was up 1.5%, but 1.5% on bridge is significant. That equated to 170.3 million in bridge tolls for the year. Bus is up about 21%. So I have been telling you the last couple months that we were going to have to, due to Clipper and relooking at our bus ridership. So just so you know, all the numbers from July to June have been adjusted as we discussed in previous months so that the whole year totals 1.8. We are using a different methodology, but we will be consistent going through. But I am glad to see that they have made $9 million in bus revenue over the year. And then with ferry, it had a 10% increase from year over year. We're now at 1.7 million on ridership and 15.5 million for revenues. Again, I would also say on the revenue side, this is the first close. And my accountants would say they have to go through the second close, but I will say this is pretty close and everything trending up. Really happy to see that.
On the bus numbers, it's up 21%. No, a big chunk of that's people riding our buses within San Francisco, getting on and off. We do not take Muni Fast Pass. They pay our local San Francisco bus fare via Clipper. And so we're very appreciative of all those people getting on and off our buses in San Francisco.
And then I'm going to do 9A and 9B, and then I can do questions because it'll hopefully round out the context if you guys
Please, I
remember.
figured that's where you were going.
All right, 9A is our monthly review of financial statements. This is the trick quiz that both Dennis and I were looking at. If you look on the front page, every month I say, here's your district revenues, here's your expenses, here's your revenue over expenses. If we were at the end of the year, we should even out with your budget status report. You'll notice that this number is 28.2 million in the block, as I say. If you recall, in fiscal year 24-25, we used about 7.8 or almost $8 million in our capital or reserves, which is really our capital reserves, to pay ourselves back for a shortfall in 24-25. So this accounts for that, since those of you that work in kind of local governments, I don't have separate funds. I got one big checking account, one big savings account. So this money in the reserve that will go toward the reserves, part of that's to pay back fiscal year 24-25 shortfall. So then again, we have that 20 million in SB 125 funds that will roll over for next fiscal year. I'm going to pause there because that's operating. The last one's capital. Questions on any 7, 8, or 9?
Directors, questions, comments? I mean, just fabulous news, obviously. Maybe not, I won't be so bold as to say light at the end of the tunnel, but at least we're kind of
Chipping away.
peeking into the tunnel, right?
Absolutely.
So just kudos to the staff.
Yeah, we're really glad on the progress this year.
At the end of the tunnel, it's not a train, is what you say. It's gonna get us.
Perfect. Any
The
other
other side of the bridge.
comments? Do we have any comments from the public on any of these items?
We have no public speakers on these items.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
And
No,
just
I-
9B is your capital quarterly. And as we've said, good news that they're spending the money because mostly seismic getting up and running. So unless there's any other questions on capital as well. Concludes my
Directors?
report.
Okay,
Thank
and
you.
I assume there's no one additional wanting to speak from the public.
That's correct. We have no speakers.
Perfect. No action is required on any of these items, so we'll continue on to item number 10, which is the fourth quarterly report of judgments and settled claims, and we'll bring Kelly back to present the report. Welcome back.
So this is just an informational item for you again, for the quarter period ending June 30, and you'll see that there were a total of 14 settlements, 7 workers' comp settlements with 4 compromise and releases, 3 stipulations, and then 7 general releases for our liability claims. Any questions?
Directors, questions, comments? Okay, none. Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks. Have a good one.
That concludes the discussion, and no action is required on item number 10. So moving on to items 11 and 12, the fourth quarterly report on authorized budget adjustments and budget transfers under the general manager's authority, as well as procurement actions. Jennifer, welcome back again.
All right.
And please proceed.
Item number 11 here is your fourth quarterly report for budget adjustments. As you know, we do them for operating, but we also do them for capital. So this really is under the general manager's authority, just quarterly budget adjustments. These are in particular are all capital projects that just needed administrative adjustments. Happy to answer any questions if anyone had any.
Directors, questions on this? Seeing none, thank you. That concludes the discussion on this item. I'd like to ask if there's anyone from the public wishing to speak on items 10, 11, 12, or address the committee under item number 13, which is the final public comment. Do we have any comment online?
We have no public speakers for items 10, 11, 12, 13. So
Thank
we're clear.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. With that, we've reached the end of the agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Okay, does that have a second?
Second.
Perfect. We are now adjourned.
Thank you. Please stand by. We're going to start rules in 5 minutes. Thank you.